So welcome back to Favorite Friday. For this case, we are going back to Michigan. This case did actually have some national coverage for a while, and for very good reason. Actually, our killer just recently did get sentenced a couple of months ago, so this case is somewhat fresh compared to some of my other cases. But as of course, as always, if you knew either of our killers, the accomplice, the victim, as always, let me know down below. I'm gonna give us publicly known down below. So with that being said, I'm gonna quit my rambling and let's get started. So of course, if you've already heard the story, you've already heard of the mother, Shanda Vander ARK. I don't have a date of birth on her, but basically the information, we do get some information basically about Shanda's childhood. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that first for obvious reasons, and then we're gonna jump into the whole reason Shanda's been all over the internet last year. So basically, apparently her mom had tried to kill her grandmother, but it failed, luckily. However, she was also still arrested. So obviously, while Shanda's mom was in prison, apparently she was in foster care. Apparently, from the ages of 6 to 9. And so Shanda and her siblings, it didn't specify exactly how many siblings she had, they were all obviously put into foster care. And so from the ages of 6 to 9, it is said that she practically got abused every single day. And this included, beating, starving, being put in ice baths, and then it said, et cetera. It didn't specify exactly what the et cetera was. However, apparently the mom eventually gets released. So I guess since it was attempted murder, it was like a short charge or whatever. It was like a short sentence she got. And so apparently she got remarried. So now Shanda has a stepfather. Apparently the kids are allowed to go back now that the mom is back out of jail. And sadly, the stepfather would start doing stuff to Shanda and apparently even make her get on birth control. So apparently Shanda actually has a sister by the name of Paige, who apparently got pregnant as a teenager. She got into a relationship and got pregnant as a teenager. And then apparently when Paige was about 16 weeks along in the pregnancy, so pretty much first trimester was over, Shanda had pretty much punched her to the point to where she had actually miscarried the kid. And then Paige would want to get pregnant a while later, I assume as an adult, and Shanda would apparently try to, terminate that pregnancy as well. Obviously, that's not related to the case, but I just thought that was interesting to mention because, you don't really hear about stuff like that in murder cases, at least not the ones I be seeing. So, yeah. So, at some point during her, young adulthood years, she wants to meet this guy by the name of ARK Ferguson. It doesn't specify how old she is when they met, but apparently she has 4 kids by him. So, you have Nolan at age 20. You have Paul when she's 22. You have Millie when she's 24. And Timothy when she's 26. Now, Paul is important to the story, but I don't have a date of birth on him. But if I do find it, while I'm editing, I guess I'll put it right here. And then Timothy, of course, being the youngest child, he was born August 6, 2006. And Timothy had actually had autism and other developmental issues. And so apparently, Shanda, how do you pronounce this woman's name? You'll see why I'm not correcting this, because, I really don't like this woman. She basically apparently was over here writing books about her sexual fantasies and showing them to the kids. So between 2009 and 2012, Shanda, as you can imagine, she had CPS investigation against these kids. So apparently, I guess they had actually wound up splitting. Her and ARK had actually wound up splitting before that time because apparently they were living separately, and she had to pay $1,000 in child support per month to ARK because apparently that was the only way that she could keep the kids could technically not entirely be taken away from her, if that makes sense. And so then apparently she had asked ARK to secretly get her pregnant so she could at least raise that kid, since the kids that aren't here, the 4 that I gave you, I can't exactly I'm only allowed supervised contact with them, and that's for 3 hours a month, and it ain't doing it for me. And luckily, there is no 5th baby. I assume ARK, thank God, said no. And so then apparently it said that she was living under 18 different addresses before finally moving to Northern Shores, Michigan in 2021. So that same year, plot twist, apparently she actually graduated from law school. So then apparently she had first graduated from Liberty University, and then she had graduated from the Western Michigan University Cooley Law School. And then apparently she would start working as basically a county clerk. So then, mind you, apparently these 4 kids apparently are still living with ARK at the time. However, apparently there was a school that was making reports of allegations that Paul, the older brother that I was talking about earlier, he apparently was sexually abusing Timothy. And then Shanda would apparently actually get married to a guy by the name of Adam, and they unfortunately have a child together. And then apparently ARK would actually call Shanda basically saying, hey, I'm kicking Paul out, because by this point, Paul's 18. I assume he's being weird. You want your kids back so bad, here's one right there. So in January 2022, Shanda's new husband, Adam, had actually had a stroke, and he actually went to go back to live with his parents in Florida, because remember, like I said, the story takes place in Michigan, so it's a long-ass distance. He actually went back to Florida after getting said stroke. So Timothy, like I said, so Adam apparently is no longer living with the family, but Paul has moved in. So if you're wondering like where at the hell is Adam and all this, he is living in Florida, being basically taken care of by his parents because of the stroke that he had. Okay. So then Timothy essentially is living under the stairs with, I guess, with the door that was supposed to, because it was, okay, so he's living under the stairs because apparently there's a closet that's under the stairs. However, the door is missing and there's a tarp. So then, of course, you can imagine with most child abuse cases, there's going to be that one child is getting starved. So there's locks being put on the fridge so Timothy couldn't easily access food. Apparently, they had caught him with some hamburger crust. They made him throw that up after he had tried to eat that because, you know, when you really starving, you're not really that picky on what you eat. They had, anytime that he was apparently allowed to eat, he either had hot sauce poured directly down his throat or he was made to eat hot sauce sandwiches, which essentially was like bread, which the bread itself was sometimes soggy, and hot sauce. So no actual like food there. And so text that also would later, not the time, but would later come out about between Shanda and Paul basically came out about putting hot sauce on Timothy's privates. Yeah, like his, yeah. And apparently they were putting him in long ice baths for punishment. So like I said earlier, Shanda over here was being abused. So it's believed that the shit that she went through as a child, she basically was inflicting onto Timothy and like only Timothy. For whatever reason, we don't even know. We believe it's because of the disability that I mentioned earlier, but that is not confirmed. So then, of course, like I said, you know, these punishments, they just kept on going and going for like the littlest of things. So then essentially he would be put into a corner and basically made to stay there for like long periods of time. And then when he was allowed to use the bathroom, because you can imagine, even though lack of eating, I still would have to use the bathroom occasionally, he would be timed whenever the few times he was allowed to actually go to the restroom. So another crazy thing about this is that Shanda had apparently actually told some of her coworkers at her job what she was doing. Apparently nobody like reported it, at least no records that I can find any coworkers reporting what happened. I guess they either didn't believe her or they didn't want to get involved. One day they find out that Timothy had actually gotten to the fridge because it was, I guess, unlocked when it's normally, like, they normally have the locks on it. And he had ate some frozen chicken nuggets because, like I said, you know, boy is starving. He does not care. Food is food at this point, right? So then she tells Paul, because Paul essentially is supposed to be watching him while she's at work, to basically stick his fingers down Timothy's throat so he can throw it up. So on July 5th, 2022, like I said, this case did not happen that long ago. Essentially, Paul goes in to check on Timothy like he always does every day. Timothy is not being responsive. So, of course, he calls Shanda, asks, like, what should I do? She recommends warm up some pizza rolls, put it near his nose. It should wake him up because, you know, also you're overstarving him. So the smell of any food, it should, like, get him, I guess. And surprisingly, it actually does, he actually does wake up to the smell of food. But obviously, it's just to get him to wake up, so obviously they don't give it to him. And then Shanda comes home. She picks up Paul, because Paul apparently works at Applebee's. She drops him off at said job at Applebee's. And then apparently Timothy's in an ice bath till like 11 p.m. And if I didn't already mention this before, she had actually put him in the ice bath before she dropped off Paul at work. So it said that he actually had been in that said ice bath for about 9 hours. So the next day, both Shanda and Paul check on him. He is unresponsive. They call 911. Timothy is sadly declared dead and only weighs 69 pounds at the scene. And of course, obviously, police are called. She claims Timothy fell off the bed. The police actually leave the scene. However, so during that time, Shanda and Paul are like trying to destroy cameras and any STD footage because if I didn't already mention this, apparently there was cameras in the house because Shanda apparently wanted 24 surveillance of Timothy at all times. But luckily, the police have somehow secretly got some of those without a warrant. Because I guess they knew that those two were going to try to dispose some evidence. And of course, Timothy's cause of death was declared as malnourishment and hypothermia. Shanda is actually apparently not even arrested until July 8th and put on a bond. Paul is arrested on first-degree child abuse and gets $500,000 bond. He testifies against his own mom in trial to get 6 to 8 years in jail. So apparently, during the trial, Paul would actually say that he had actually noticed the changes in Timothy the last month that he was alive, and apparently he took pictures to show to his mom, like, hey, we need to stop this because, like, look, it's not getting pretty. Because apparently there were pictures of the malnourishment that Timothy was going through. They found, I guess he tried to use that as an excuse. And then, of course, Shanda had apparently went through a hunger strike her first month in jail. So then, of course, Shanda apparently at trial, she basically tries to say that, listen, I did not technically have custody of Timothy. That technically was over on ARK. So I did not have the documents that's necessary to enroll a child in school. I did not have his medical card that could have got him any medical attention because ARK had it. And that's why Timothy apparently never took any medication while living with her. and that she did admit, yes, he did have autism, but didn't have like motor issues. That's her words. However, apparently he did have ADHD and bipolar. That's according to her, of course. And she tried to say that she had insomnia, and she tried to say that there were cameras all over the house because her husband, Adam, was actually disabled before the stroke. So I guess the stroke had made his disability even worse. It didn't specify like how exactly disabled he was, but it just said he was disabled. And that apparently she had insomnia as a result of Adam's stroke. So, and of course, the jury did not believe that, and Shanda basically gets sentenced to life. And so, yeah, like I said, that is the case of Shanda Van Ark, Vander Ark, sorry. And so, like I said, if you knew of Paul, Shanda, the other two kids that are still alive that are not involved in this list that we know of, definitely let me know. So, with that being said, I cover failed females 2 times a week. This is Scott from More Failed Females. I'll see you guys next one. Bye. You get